Hello, welcome to another briefing. So, in this briefing, I'm going to start out per usual with the satellite. What we can see here is this southerly surge of fog. That's the technical name we give when you have this pattern where there's a little coastal low. We call it an eddy. It's essentially a counterclockwise circulation of the winds as they interact with the coastal terrain here, and that after a heat wave where we have high pressure over the Great Basin and lower pressure out by the coast, you have the winds blowing out of the northeast. You get a lot of downsloping winds, you got warming, you get the coastal fog wiped out. And at the end of these heat waves events, as this high pressure starts to shift to the east, you get the gradient starting to neutralize, and this low starts to move up the coast. And you get this southerly flow. It's kind of dragging ocean fog that forms down here. It actually formed, we'll take a look at the playback. It formed off of the Southern California coast yesterday afternoon, and it crept up through the evening hours all the way into the Bay Area, and it has crept up a little further up until about the northern Sonoma coast, and it still has not crept further north than that. The northern coast of California is still clear at this moment with dry air in place. That will likely change. But let's go ahead and take a look at the playback here so you can see what I was talking about. So here's yesterday morning. You see there's some fog way south over Southern California. And then as we go throughout the day yesterday, notice how that fog creeps up. Eventually it reaches Monterey, and then it reaches San Francisco, and then overnight it just crept in further and it went up to Sonoma County coastline. And so that's that classic coastal eddy that you see, and that's driving that fog to creep up, and ignore that H, that's upper level high pressure, that's looking at a different level of the atmosphere. But I mean, you see that it starts to develop this tongue as we go into this morning, and that's just a classic eddy circulation interacting with the terrain. So very fascinating in my opinion. And you see that a little closer there as we look at the close-up in the Bay Area. And this is still a very shallow marine layer. That fog layer is pretty shallow. It's, I'd say, around 500 feet. Because we do have a lot of compression above it. There is a big upper high that is still sitting right off the coast, starting to nudge into the Pacific Northwest now to bring them some heat. But still, inland areas are going to be still pretty hot today. 90s, maybe even 100 for the Sacramento area. Because it's a pretty shallow, pretty compressed marine layer at this point. So only areas along the immediate coast and maybe along the bay shores here of San Francisco Bay, for instance, will see some cooling today compared to yesterday. Now, we'll take a look at the current temperatures here. Let's actually go ahead. Before we do that, let's look at what we had yesterday. These are the observed highs yesterday. So yesterday was by far our warmest day, our peak of this warm spell event. I mean, you saw 91 in South Sausalito here, almost right at the mouth of the Golden Gate. This area usually averages in the upper 60s, even in July here, because you get that constant wind off of the Golden Gate most of the time, as that Pacific wind is coming through the Golden Gate. However, yesterday that's not what happened. Yesterday we had warm, dry, northerly winds blowing from a completely different direction, bringing that warm air. I mean, we had 80 degrees practically all the way to the coast in some areas, 78 at Crissy Field, right at the Golden Gate Bridge. It was really warm. You had 80s in the Point Reyes area as well. And then you had a little bit of a light onshore wind. That southerly surge, as I mentioned, was starting to materialize, and we were starting to have a little bit of ocean wind right off of the coast, and the shallow marine inversion trying to get organized. But during the peak of this heat, it was pretty shallow. I mean, it was maybe cooling off the coastal areas a little bit in the afternoon hours, but I mean, we did see 80 degrees practically all the way to the coast. We even saw 92 at Point Reyes Station, 93 in Olima. I mean, it was 77 degrees at the tip of Point Reyes, right out by the cold water where it's rarely out of the 50s. Even in the middle of the summer, you have plenty of cold water and a constant wind off of that cold water. This spot out here on the tip of the Point Reyes Peninsula will rarely get out of the 50s most days in the summer even. So for them to get to 77 degrees, that's something that should definitely be noted. And I mean, you saw temperatures around 100 degrees in the San Rafael, San Anselmo area here. Most of San Rafael right around 100, some locations a little bit below that, but that's still plenty hot. Definitely a very uncomfortable day if you did not have air conditioning. And thankfully, a lot of these areas that aren't used to this kind of heat, out by Panoramic Highway, out by parts of the coastal hills of Marin here, much cooler today. They're definitely experiencing some relief. If we take a look at the current temperatures right now, I mean, it's back down to 55 at Crissy Field. That marine layer with that fog, albeit shallow, made a significant push into the western half of San Francisco. And even the downtown area is just in the 60s today. I think we had 70s at this time yesterday. I mean, 57 Panoramic Highway, 70 degrees about halfway up the mountain on Mount Tam here. 85 degrees top of Tam, you're still above that inversion, you're still in that warm air. But you'll see a lot of these coastal and bayside areas much cooler today with the winds for a lot of areas blowing out of the west. Not very strong, but decent little west wind that bringing some of that ocean air in and keeping things a little bit cooler than it was yesterday. Take a look here. This is just sea level pressure. So these are the upper heights. This is what's going on at about 18,000 feet. To put it simply, this is where the warm air columns are and where the cooler air columns are. So you see the center of this heat wave right offshore the Bay Area. Heat wave or warm spell, depending on where you are. Now you go in, put this projection into motion. Mind you, it's just a model projection. We go into Sunday into Monday here. You see that nudging into the Pacific Northwest. As a result, it loosens its grip a little bit over the Bay Area, so even inland areas will get some cooling. The coast will get significant cooling as that wind shifts back to an onshore direction. However, there could be a little bit of a switch to an offshore flow. Looks like a late Saturday into Sunday. However, I think the with the marine layer being a little more established at the coast, it's possible that that offshore wind doesn't make it all the way to the coast, even with this sort of little shortwave passing. That's my thought at the moment. That could change. I could maybe do an update if that changes, but I think that as of now, if you're along the immediate coast, maybe even the bay sides here of the bay of the San Francisco Bay, you might be done with this warm spell for with this one. I mean, not to say there couldn't be another one down the road. We've had quite a few this year, but you might be safe for now. Inland could heat up a little bit again as we go through this weekend. It could stay pretty warm to hot, and then as we go further into next week, it looks like we will get some more cooling even inland as eventually a trough dips down from the Pacific Northwest here, flattens that ridge of high pressure, and allows that onshore wind to push much further inland. If we look at the temperatures aloft here, it doesn't cool off that much, but there will be more of an onshore wind at the surface, which will help locations cool off nicely. Just show a different, just a different visualization comparing two computer models. For the pressure up aloft, and you can see that dome of the high pressure sort of shifts into the Pacific Northwest. This is just a different way of looking at it. It's still pretty strong over here, but see that wind, the wind shift at the surface should really help, because we look at the temperature projections, National Blend of models here. You're looking at this is starting out with tomorrow. Let's see if I can get today. Here we go. Today. Still upper 90s for a lot of inland locations, around 80 right around the bay. Some areas close to 90 still, and then immediate coast right around 70 today, maybe a little cooler at the tip of the Point Reyes Peninsula, for example. I don't think it'll be 77 there today. I think it'll be more like 60, if even that. And a lot of coastal locations here, instead of being around 80, they'll be more around 70 today. Novato, for instance, hit about 100 yesterday. Today will be about 88. So much cooler, warm, but much cooler. And then tomorrow we're looking at a few degrees more of cooling, and then Sunday a little more than that. Stronger onshore push most likely. And then we go into Monday, Tuesday. It stays pretty warm to hot inland until Wednesday, and then Thursday. Thursday we really drop off inland, even Sacramento struggling to get out of the 80s. We're going to likely have a deep onshore push here. A lot stronger of a sea breeze to advect some of that colder air further inland, and then take it with a grain of salt as we go through the forecast in more than 7 to 8 days out here. But it looks like there could be some continued good cooling with that upper trough with cooler air coming in as we go through the weekend of the 20th and the 21st. That's all I have for today. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for being patient as I go off on sharing all this information, and I'll see you next time.